Okay, what should we do with this kobold then?
I mean, it and its buddies tried to knife us in the middle of the night. I think that deserves a little something, don't you?
Oh, come on, look how cute it is. Do we have to kill it?
It is possible that it has information about the wizard's whereabouts that would prove valuable. Perhaps we should interrogate it first.
That seems fair to me. Oh, goody. Can we call it Gary?
No, we can't call it Gary. You can't go around naming every pathetic creature you knock over the head with a club.
Can he be our intern? I've always wanted an intern.
No, absolutely not. There's no more room at this table, 1, and 2, I already have to wear too many stupid costumes and do too many stupid voices. There's no way we're taking an intern, especially not one that's a kobold. No, 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 no!
Look, it's Gary the Intern.
Welcome to the DM Lair. I'm Luke Hart, and I've been a Dungeon Master since high school. On this channel, I give practical Dungeon Master advice that you can implement at your game table. Today, I'll be sharing with you the story of Gary the Intern. Gary made his first appearance in my Wonder Panda campaign at work, and was thereafter spotted briefly in my Manus Invictus campaign while the group fought its way through Tiamat's palace. My youngling players stumbled across him and discovered his affinity for beef jerky, and most recently, my Sword Coast Guard group welcomed Gary into their party while raiding the lair of Vraskin Delver, an ancient white dragon. And the point is this. In every group that I've introduced Gary the Intern, he's been an instant party favorite and gone on to become a beloved NPC, if of course he didn't die prematurely. So, as we dig into this story, hopefully we'll unveil what made him such a successful NPC. The adventuring party, mostly composed of humanoid pandas with a small red panda thrown in for spice, has been teleported from their homeworld into a new and forgotten place, and their overall goal is to get back home. To this end, they are tracking down a powerful elven wizard that the elves in Lamelty told them about. They arrive at the wizard's tower and find an automated magic mouth message telling them the wizard is away but should be back shortly. They hang out for the day, waiting, and then decide to take a long rest nearby. However, they are discussing giving up on finding the wizard entirely. That night, while they're resting, a group of kobolds sneaks into their camp and begins rooting through their belongings. The sentries spot them, wake their comrades, and the wholesale slaughter of kobolds begins. I mean, they're just kobolds, right? Basically, I could sense my players were struggling with where to take the whole track down the wizard thing, and they were discussing giving up on it and doing something else until the wizard came back. And I suppose this is partially my own fault because I did give them quite a few other side missions that they could work on at any given point in time. So, I sent the kobolds in during the long rest with the express purpose of them being a clue for my players. Like, hey, kobolds just sneaked in and tried to steal stuff. Maybe they had something to do with the wizard not coming back. And ideally, I was hoping my players would think enough to take one alive and question it. In essence, I used the kobolds to drive the adventure forward and prevent it from stalling out. I feel like all Dungeon Masters need to do this from time to time. It's part of cultivating the game experience for your players. Although it might be realistic to run into a dead end and just give up, it's not particularly fun. And most folks are at the game table to have fun. At least I hope they are.
You know, although it probably wouldn't have been my first choice, yes, I'm rather happy to be a tool.
So one kobold does survive by surrendering when it sees all of its companions dying or dead around it. The heroes surround the kobold and the interrogation begins. As it turns out, the kobold is not only rather stupid, but quite cooperative. With the mere promise of shinies, the kobold begins divulging information. He tells the players that the kobolds captured the wizard on the orders of their leader, a particularly witchy kobold that no one really likes, and that they have him safely in their compound. Instead of just going to the kobold lair and rescuing the wizard, my players decide they should probably break into the wizard's tower first, because that's the responsible and reasonable thing to do. I mean, unguarded wizard's tower, right? There is no entrance on the ground level. So they have their raven familiar scout the top of the tower out and find a trap door there. So they figure it's just a matter of climbing the tower and getting in through the trapdoor. First, however, they send Kevin the squirrel, some poor animal they befriended and took on as a pet, up the side of the tower. Don't ask me why, the squirrel wasn't actually able to do anything of use anyway. When that tactic fails, they send Doug the slug, yes, another poor animal, and I think you're starting to get a feel for what my players are kind of like, right? And Gary up the tower. Oh, and I never told you about his name. Yeah, so the kobold gave his name as Garvin Dardor or something equally lame and unpronounceable. So my players dubbed him Gary, and that was that. Anyway, Gary and Doug the slug are heading up the tower. Gary with a rope so we can throw it down to the others. And the tower's defenses are triggered. A current of electricity begins to course up the tower, beginning at the base, quickly approaching Gary. Poku and the other pandas begin shouting, "Jump, Gary, jump! Trust us! We'll catch you!" And having no other choice, Gary jumps from 30 feet up, hoping that he won't go squish.
Yeah, I'd like to say I wasn't scared, but hey, my term life insurance had just lapsed, and the Kobold Clan's survivor benefits weren't exactly generous. Yeah, I was at a very vulnerable point in my life.
So the Wizard's Tower, yeah, I had no idea that my players would try to break in, and quite frankly, I was neither ready to run an exploration scene inside the tower, nor willing to improvise it. The way I see it, a Wizard's Tower should be really cool, and what I'd be able to make up on the spot certainly wouldn't do it justice. Thus, I created some powerful defense systems on the fly. Yes, it was to blackwall my players from going somewhere I wasn't ready for, but I don't feel it was completely unreasonable either. I mean, it's a wizard's tower. You don't think it's going to have some nice defenses? Of course it would. However, my advice to dungeon masters is to avoid doing what I did. It's a last resort, only to be done when absolutely necessary. Most of the time, allow your players the freedom to poke around. And if it's something that you haven't prepared for, then just do your best to improvise it. It's okay if that scene isn't your best. Your players will appreciate the freedom you grant them and probably understand that it's impossible for a dungeon master to be ready for every possible direction they may go. So don't sweat it, just do your best. That's all anyone can ever expect of you. As a quick reminder, I'm doing my live streams over on Twitch now and then publishing the replay to my second YouTube channel, the DM Lair Streams, on the following Monday. Oh, and while I'm plugging things, remember to join our Discord community too. Lots of cool folks are over there slinging around Dungeon Master advice and help. If you're interested in any of that stuff, there are links down in the description. So, by some lucky dice rolls, and maybe just a teeny bit of plot armor for an NPC that I could tell my players really liked, Poku catches Gary, and he's unarmed. Unarmed? Unharmed! Doug the Slug, however, yeah, he didn't make it. At this point, Gary has pretty much had it with the party and wants to leave. The promise of shinies is just no longer enough to justify the risk. He wants hazard pay or something. So my players offer him something even better. An internship. What better thing for a kobold coming up in the world? Good pay, solid benefits, on-the-job training. Now, Gary had never been offered such a position before, so naturally he accepts.
You know, in all honesty, I didn't even do it for the paycheck. And even the health benefits, as good as they were, weren't the real reason. The idea of being an intern sort of validated me as a kobold, you know? So yeah, I took the position.
So here's the big question, right? Do you allow this sort of anachronism in the game? I mean, my players were talking about internships and healthcare and retirement plans. Clearly a kobold, or anyone from that time period, would have no idea what they were talking about. However, I could tell my players were loving it, so I went along with it. Part of this is a question of what sort of game you want to run, but there's also the question of what sort of game your players want to play. Clearly, both parties need to be happy because just as much as players can't play without a DM can't run a game without players. But for my part, I was happy to allow it into the game because it was hilarious. We were all laughing our butts off. And isn't that why most of us play the game? To get together with folks and have fun and laugh? Do I always allow weird and wanky things my players come up with into the game? No, absolutely not. But but neither am I inflexible and close-minded. At least I don't think I am. So, my players finish dinking around with the Wizard's Tower and head off with Gary the Intern to the Kobold compound. Gary does a great job of leading them through the first few chambers of the compound, even alerting them to some guards. However, the time comes when, in the chaos of battle, the group becomes split up a little and Gary disappears. Let's just say there was a small incident with a latrine and a fireball, and we'll just leave it at that. At any rate, the party believes that Gary has betrayed them and begins plotting their revenge. They continue exploring the compound, dodging traps and dealing with kobolds. They're a lot tougher than they should be. Oh, and in the cramped tunnels of the kobold warrens, everything is so much worse. Ask any of my players, any of them, and they will tell you that being squeezed is not fun. Oh man, I cannot tell you how much my players hated going through the kobold compound. Being squeezed all the time was horribly frustrating for them. But hey, what did they expect? They were kobold warrens. They would have much preferred 10 feet wide corridors, but sometimes some realism is needed too. You can't always give your players everything they want. I can guarantee you this though, I'll probably never be able to convince them to go into narrow corridors like that again. A critical moment comes when the players have alerted most of the kobold compound to their presence. Alarms suck, right? And they are beset on all sides by kobold phalanxes. And who comes to their rescue? Gary the Intern, that's who. Gary takes them into some secret tunnels, helping them escape from the other kobolds. The party is surprised, but also quite grateful. And then Gary takes them on a shortcut straight to the kobold boss lady.
Did the thought of betraying my new employers go through my mind? Did I nearly value kin and family over a heartless corporate entity that likely did not have my best interests in mind? Maybe.
Okay, this was less about the rescue, my players would have been fine, and more about fast tracking my players through the dungeon. You see, a key quality that a dungeon master wants to develop is reading the table. Pay attention to your players. Are they having fun? Are they engaged? Or are they frustrated and bored? If the latter, you need to do something. And I could sense that my players had had enough of the kobold compound. It was time to speed things up a little. And I'll be honest, I, the dungeon master, had had enough of it. You see, sometimes things seem a whole lot better on paper, but in actual practice, they don't turn out so well. It's at that point the dungeon master needs to be willing to set aside their carefully laid plans. So the heroes slip out of the secret tunnels on a platform above the kobold leader's throne room. They can see the wizard tied up nearby. There's also lots of kobolds milling about. They figure they probably can't take on all of the kobolds all at once, and also safely rescue the wizard, so some deception is in order. Using illusionary magic, they manage to trick half the kobolds into attacking the other half, and then untie the wizard, slip him some spell components, and have him teleport them all away. And then, once they are safe, they promptly promote Gary to full-time associate.
Was I a little concerned that my rapid rise to the top might be accompanied by a rapid fall to the bottom? Sure, a little bit. However, you'll have to admit, Gary the FTE does have a nice ring to it.
So why have all of my groups universally loved Gary the Intern? Was it the cute and endearing voice I gave him? Was it because he was dumb and gullible and willing to sell out anyone for shinies? Was it the name? Was it because he was mostly weak and helpless and the players could crush him easily if they wanted to? I have no idea, but I'll tell you this. When your players take a liking to an NPC, you gotta capitalize on that crap because you have no idea when it's likely to happen again. Tell us all in the comments about an NPC that was an instant party favorite at your table. Click right here to hear about a time my players royally ticked off the big bad and the fun that resulted. And next week, we'll be discussing building exotic encounters. So until next time, let's play D&D.